comfort and distractions of today collide to indulge our desires and provide a slow death by apathy. A superior primitive ethos exists. Prepare for tomorrow. Defend what you value and lead those you love. This mindset is the foundation of living an authentic life as a bold, disciplined man resolute in your mission. Prepare, defend, lead. Your mission. Own it.
All right, my name is Joe Prim, and I am the host of this podcast, this experiment known at the moment as Prepare.Defend.Lead. If you have been with me in the past through Ever Vigilant, hey, welcome. I hope that you enjoy what's going on here with Prepare.Defend.Lead. Things are going to be changed up a little bit, but you'll still recognize some of the guests and some of what's going on. But we're going to change things up a little bit. If this is your first time listening or you're just coming aboard here with Prepare.Defend.Lead, you can always go back and check out some of the episodes of Ever Vigilant on iTunes or Spotify. But either way, welcome. Good to have you aboard. I titled this episode Back in the Saddle because it's been a while since I recorded a real episode of a podcast. Earlier this year, I kind of retired myself out of podcasting. I needed a break, but at the same time, really never expected to come back to doing this. The break was good, and believe me, not having a weekly podcast hanging over me for a time was great. And if you had asked me at the first few weeks into that break if I would ever do another podcast, I probably would have told you no. But as time has passed and I see what's going on in the world around us, I want to get involved. I don't want to remain silent. I think that a lot of what's going on is feeding into a frenzy, whether it be from one side or the other. And we need to realize that the more worked up, the more frustrated, the more angry that we are, whether it be towards something good or whether it be for something that we perceive as evil, the more worked up you are, the more angry, the more passionate you are about something, the easier you are to manipulate. So I kind of want to look at things from a little bit different perspective. I want to look at things a little bit differently than what we are hearing from most people. I also want to have a little bit of fun along the way. Ever Vigilant, really, from the beginning, Ever Vigilant was rough for me because I was so new to podcasting. So I had to be very rigorous in everything that I was doing, and I was never comfortable doing the podcast at the beginning. I mean, you want to talk about getting butterflies in the stomach. As soon as I'd hit that play button, I was all a bundle of nerves. And as time went on, I won't say the frustration, but at times I was overloaded with what I was trying to do and what I was trying to put out and the seriousness of the ideas that I was trying to bring across. And because of that, it became very serious. And I want to back away from that just a little bit. There's a lot of seriousness going on right now. Our world around us has changed, I think we will all agree, probably for the worse since the beginning of this year as a whole. And I believe that either we can accept that and accept the world for what it is at this point, and once it's accepted, we can put the effort in to try to come up with solutions to negate or get around what's going on. We'll touch on that a little bit more in this episode. But I thought, since this is my first episode, and I have recently done some work on my website, Prepare.Defend.Lead.com, that I hit on a couple of things on that website. Number one, besides this podcast, I'm also working on a book. The title of the book is Open: 6 Life-Changing Concepts That Are Easy to Implement but Difficult to Master. This is a project that I've been working on for years, actually. It's an idea that came to me long ago, and something that I've been flushing out through the years, something that I've done podcasts on, but I finally believe it's time to get it down in at least virtual ink, right? At least up on Kindle. But what I would like to do for you, if you know how to read and it sounds like an interesting idea to you, if you go over to Prepare.Defend.Lead.com, at the very top of the page, if you leave me your email address, I will give you a free digital copy of the book when it's finished. Before it goes off to Kindle and print on demand, that way, those that listen to this podcast, those that are involved in what's going on here, get a first look at it, get a first look at the open concept in print, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback from you guys once that book is released. The other thing I want to ask you to do as well, while you're on the website, if you decide you want to see what that book is all about once it's released, go ahead and subscribe to the website as well, down at the bottom of the page. With all of the blocking of voices that's going on right now, all of the shutting down of accounts over anything at this time makes me believe that at some point, if things really go the way that I want them to go with this podcast, there will be at least a chance that this podcast is something that people want to silence. And if that's the case, it's going to make it very tough to get the message out there, to communicate with you guys. So if you go to the website and if you subscribe, that way I have your email address. We can always communicate through a newsletter. And if all of a sudden the podcast isn't available, or my Instagram gets shut down, or Facebook gets shut down, I always have a way that I can communicate exactly what's going on and where we can bring things back around to. I do have an account up on Parler as well, and on Locals, if those are platforms that you guys are using that are a little bit more pro-freedom of speech. So if you guys are on Parler or on Locals, look up Prepare.Defend.Lead, and you guys can follow me there. Those are kind of optional accounts. I'm definitely not as active there, but I have those up in case we get shut down elsewhere. So let me hit on another thing on the website, and that's my little bio that I threw up there. Kind of more something fun that I threw out there, but we'll go through it. That way, those who have never listened to this podcast or know me from Ever Vigilant have an opportunity to get to know just a hint about who I am. My nickname in the world in which I really work has always been Primo. As my last name is Prim, so that has been my nickname in the construction trade for a long time. Hometown, I got none. I have never lived anywhere in my life more than 5 years. So since I was a kid, I've been bouncing around, living state to state and town to town, and my hope is that will change now that we're in Texas. We'll get into a little bit more about what we have going on here in a minute. Personal motto: I didn't come here to get laughed at. And that is something that I use on a regular basis, because that I didn't come here to get laughed at is really positive positive self-talk. Right? When I'm in a challenging situation, or I need to do something or say something that I really don't want to do, I remind myself that I didn't come here to get laughed at. It's time to get down to business, time to get the work done. Favorite quote from Arch Abbot Boniface Wimmer Forward, always forward, everywhere forward. We must not be held back by debts, bad years, or by difficult times. Man's adversity is God's opportunity. Last meal request, good barbecue. One of the perks of living down here in Texas, good barbecue. Weapon of choice, I really like to carry my Glock 27, a little bit more compact. I bought that into Glock 23 and the 40 caliber way back in the day when that was very popular. Ended up getting the baby Glock way down the line just because I could share holsters and magazines between the two, and that has kind of become my choice for carry, the Glock 27. COVID-19, negative. Required reading, number one, top of the list, obviously, write the Bible. A lot of wisdom can be gained from the Bible, as it has been around for thousands of years, not always in print the way that we see it today, but words of wisdom nonetheless. Fox's Book of Martyrs by John Fox. What a great book. It's something that I had been wanting to read and had been on my list for a long time. Finally got into that this year and would read a chapter or a martyr or two as the book is kind of listed out in martyrs and who they were and why they were martyred for their faith. And very good book to understand Christianity. Leadership, Strategy, and Tactics by Jocko Willink. Really, I am a big fan of what Jocko's doing in the leadership category. I think I've read all of his books on leadership, regularly listen to his podcast, and had the opportunity earlier this year actually to see him in Austin, which was a great experience. But as part of seeing him there, it was kind of a tour as he was releasing his leadership strategy and tactics, and I was given that book as part of the ticket price, and that book is probably my favorite of all the books I've read from him. Really gets into the weeds on answering questions on what to do in specific cases in order to be a great leader. The Way of Men by Jack Donovan really was groundbreaking for me to have a better understanding of the concept of what it really means to be a man. Fear is Fuel by Patrick Sweeney. I talked about that in one of the last episodes of Ever Vigilant, really getting into what fear is and how fear holds us back. And once you realize truly what fear is, and this book was a great way to get a better grasp on it, you start to see fear everywhere and people being held back by fear and how ugly it is and what it does to people and their lives and the people around them. And we'll be touching on that a little later in this episode as well. The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. Again, another must-read. And Left of Bang by Patrick Van Horn and Jason A. Riley. Again, another great book on understanding situational awareness, and it's a big part of Prepare, Defend, and Lead is situational awareness and mindset, and you'll get a good dose of both of those from Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker and Left of Bang. So let's roll into Texas. And where I live right now in Texas, there's obviously a lot of transplants, a lot of people moving to Texas, especially this Austin area right now. And what I find interesting is I meet new people each and every day. You really can tell pretty quickly without even asking who the native Texans are. There's a different way of looking at things. There's a bit of a swagger. There's a different sort of pride for their state than I have ever seen before. And if anything, I wish I had moved here a long time ago. here in Texas, I feel like I'm at home. Here in Texas, we are enjoying the weather. Here, it's fall. It's still in the 90s. Very little humidity. Big, cloudless blue sky. I could not ask for anything more. So far, this has been really everything that I had hoped that it would be, and even a little bit more. Just to kind of demonstrate a little bit of an idea of what Texas is about. A few years back, when I was just starting to consider moving here, I had the opportunity to come and work in Fort Worth. And Fort Worth is its own special place. And just over the 2 months that I was there, it really kind of got a special place in my heart. I've traveled around Central America quite a bit and traveled around the United States quite a bit, and Fort Worth has its own flavor, its own tone, and they call it Cowtown, and it really is. It is a great place downtown. There's some really neat restaurants, but while I was there and had my first real dose of working with and being around Texans, there was a superintendent on the project that I was working on, and as I was leaving, as my dad often would in the trades, we would leave the job, you'd be walking out the door or walking away, and as you were leaving, you'd say, have a good one, boys. See you tomorrow. And as I turned around and said that to Sean and a couple of other superintendents that were standing there, I said, have a good night, boys. We'll see you tomorrow. Sean rebutted quick as you could. He said, boys, that's like calling King Kong a monkey. And that right there is the tone and the attitude and the swagger of Texas, and the Texans rolled into one short little story. We recently bought a piece of property this year here in Texas because this is where we plan on staying for a long time. So we bought a piece of property. Anybody who's been following me for a little bit knows that when we were in Illinois, we had a little homestead with goats and chickens and ducks and geese and dogs and cats, and enjoyed that. It was a labor of love. A lot of work and effort went into the things that we did, planting fruit trees and fruit bushes and gardens, but we enjoyed it. Every step of the way, we were learning something new, experimenting, and trying to get a better grasp on what self-efficiency looks like, what our forefathers and our ancestors did on a day in and day out basis in order to provide sustenance and shelter for their families. But we had an opportunity here in Texas that was a little bit different than anything I've ever seen anywhere else. Shortly after we moved here, and we started looking around for properties. What would our options look like? Where could we live? What types of areas could we afford? How far away from Austin would we need to be and able to afford something? What are the different sizes of parcels? And just trying to get a feel for Texas and what the options would be. And I happened to, at that time, come across an ad for a new subdivision that was being built. And one thing that was unique in the subdivision was that it was filled with exotic animals. And that was how they got you your tax break for your AG exemption, is that the whole property, everybody's lots, would be open to different types of exotic animals. I thought that was really interesting, that concept, that idea of looking out in your backyard and seeing different types of deer and different types of animals, and it just kind of stuck in my mind as something that was unique to Texas that I had never seen before, heard of before. And fast forward months and months later, we had an opportunity to go to one of these places and look at some of the lots that they had. Where we ended up at this place We have river access, which equals water, right? So we have river access, and if you're following on Instagram, you'll see even before our house has been built, right after we purchased the property, we've been spending a lot of time out there. It's our getaway. It's our opportunity to get away from the suburbs and go and relax, put our feet in the water, watch the kids swimming around and collecting rocks, and just our chance to breathe, we'll say. Probably one of the quietest places I've ever been in the United States, far enough away from the highways that you're not hearing the rumble of tires. So it's quiet, fresh air, beautiful views. Listening to that river run over the rocks is great. And we ended up in a place, like I had described earlier, where they get their AG exemption from having exotic animals. So every time we go there, we end up spending a little time at the river, and then we'll almost do like an overland tour through our own almost personal zoo. This subdivision that we ended up in is 600 acres, maybe more. So as they're developing the roads through there, we just drive down these roads. They got feeders around for these exotic animals, and we've seen everything from gemsbok to scimitar to black buck, axis deer, fallow deer, red stag. And it seems like every time that we go there, we discover something new. We have an opportunity to see something that we hadn't seen before, whether this last time we saw some goats, always see whitetail. We ended up buying a small parcel of just 5 acres, but it's actually small, we'll say, by Texas standards, right? A Texas ranch, old school, way back, a real ranch was 1 square mile by 1 square mile. So 5 acres here is a tiny parcel of land, but it's ours. It's actually twice as big as our property that we had in Illinois. So that's pretty awesome. But it's a blank slate. We have the opportunity to do what we want there. We have plans in the works for a small home to be built on the property. Hopefully ground will be breaking soon. And as time gets closer to that wrapping up, we'll do some sort of competition or some sort of raffle, or we'll do some way of trying to get those that listen to this podcast involved in our housewarming. When we have a big party, when that thing gets wrapped up, have barbecue, have people over to celebrate our move down to Texas and our settling in the state. I would like to get those of you that listen to this podcast, especially those of you that have been around for a long time, involved, have an opportunity to meet some of you guys and let you know where we're at and what we're up to. So I'll keep you guys posted on that, and we'll work out that as we go. So I had the opportunity, and this is one thing we're going to do on this podcast. We're going to tell stories, going to talk about what's going on, talk a little bit about the news. When I do these podcasts by myself, it's really going to be bouncing around a little bit more than it used to be. It's not going to be one topic focused. And then when we do the interview episodes, those will just be an open-ended conversation. Somebody comes on with something that they want to talk about, something on their mind, we'll probably concentrate on that. Those episodes, I'm not going to put a time limit on them. We'll see how long they go, how long we can stay interesting, and we'll keep the recording going as long as we need to. So I had the opportunity this week. I received an email from a local trade union. They had some students that were just wrapped up what they call a pre-apprenticeship. That's opportunity. They sign up for the trade school, and they have, here in Texas, 4 weeks of training. They get very little pay for this 4 weeks of training, but during that time they get their OSHA 10 cards. They get certified to work on different lifts and use different equipment that carpenters normally use on a construction site. So I was asked to come in and give a little motivational talk, just share with these young apprentices that are starting something new in their life. So, of course, I said yes. I would have no problem going in and doing that. So I threw together a quick 5 keys to being a great apprentice. And the reason I'm going to share it on this episode of this podcast, this little speech or little talk that I came up with, is because these have really nothing to do with a specific job or a specific trade or a specific place that you are in your life. Really, they're universal. And I wrote them down here as a good reminder for myself as much as for these students that are embarking on something new in their life. So I'll go through this real quick. It won't take long, and then we'll get into a few other things before we finish up this episode. So before I get to the 5 keys of being a great apprentice, let me tell you a little bit about the history of me and my family. In 1945, shortly after defeating the Japanese and World War II wrapping up and coming to an end, my grandfather joined Carpenter's Local 1 in Chicago. He was walking down the street of Chicago, trying to get a grasp on where he was going, what was next in his life. And a random stranger came up to him, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Young man, have you ever thought about becoming a carpenter?" My grandfather said no, it's not something that he had considered. The guy handed him a handbill with the address to Local 1 on it and said, "I think that you should consider this, young man. Here's the address. Go down there whenever you like." So my grandfather made a beeline for Carpenter's Local 1 in Chicago and really wrote the trajectory that the family would go on from that day forward. My father and my uncle followed in his footsteps, and I did as well. And in 1996, I was sitting where these students were in this class, wondering if I could do it, where I was going, and how big of a challenge it was going to be accepted and learn this trade. My big message to them was, this trade can take you wherever you want to go. It just depends on how much energy and effort and drive you have to put into it. So to the 5 keys of being a great apprentice. Number 5, don't be on time. Be early. Show up every day and give notice if you are going to be late. Number 4, be humble, teachable, and respectful to those in authority. Number 3, don't complain. Complaining does nothing, solves nothing, improves nothing. Have a good attitude. Number 2, be prepared. Get the rest that you need in order to succeed the next day. Bring the tools, the water, the food, the snacks, whatever it is that you need to get the job done. Be prepared. Number 1, be quiet. Listen to what those around you are saying, those that are part of your team, those that are leading your team. Listen. Keep your mouth shut. And the bonus, always be doing something. Grab a broom, fill the generator with gas, clean up trash, offer to run for screws. Your job is to make the boss look good. You must be a problem solver and find a way. So those were my notes for those guys to start out on the right foot, and I think they're universal. I don't think one of those 5 keys plus the bonus does not work in any business, wherever you're at, in order to help you to succeed. So let's move on to something that's probably going to piss off some people. That's all right. Don't mind rubbing people the wrong way, but all I ask is that you listen to what I have to say, listen through my idea here, and then at the end, if you disagree, I have no problem with that. Do you have a problem with that? Are you going to listen to the next episode? This is what I think about masks. Let's just say this. I believe masks are really a complete waste. I believe that wearing masks for this COVID-19 is a joke. I believe that when you look at the statistics, it's less likely that you will get COVID than a lot of the other diseases that we look at this point as extinct in our country, and the numbers are actually higher for those things, like tuberculosis, than for this COVID-19. But this is what I will say about wearing masks. And this is the bigger problem that I have with the mask mandates. I believe that the government mandating mask use is wrong. I don't believe that that's their place. If owners decide that they would like you to wear masks in their establishment, I believe that that should be respected. Either way, a lot of us are under mask mandates, whether it's a statewide or a city or a county jurisdiction. Majority of us in this country right now, unlike Sweden or Florida or South Dakota, are under mask mandates. Part of this, or I will say a large part of this, is politics. Here in Texas, we are still under the mask mandate, and I have to believe that no matter if Governor Abbott believes this is the right thing or not, whether he believes masks are useful or helpful or not, because the CDC and the WHO have waffled and gone back and forth on this stuff themselves, it doesn't really matter, because it has become a game of politics. And the moment you say people don't need to wear a mask, if a small section of people end up getting COVID-19, the blame will fall squarely on whoever is the leader in that area. And because of that, because this has turned into a complete, total game of politics, playing the game is different than always just what you believe. Part of my thoughts, I think, are influenced by 25 years in the trades of being required to wear all sorts of uncomfortable, ridiculous PPE or personal protective equipment, right? I have 25 years of wearing sometimes gloves, steel-toed boots, fluorescent vests or fluorescent shirts, hard hats, ear pro, eye pro, sometimes the list goes on, sleeves of a certain length, pants. So I have gotten used to doing what needs to be done and not whining and complaining about something that's holding me back from doing what I want to do. So part of my thoughts on masks may be jaded by that. May be jaded by being expected to wear ridiculous things in order to do my job and do what needs to be done. safety equipment, wearing harnesses all day long when you're in locations where they're probably not necessary. But these are the hoops that you jump through in order to do what needs to be done. So a few weeks ago, my daughter, who's right at the age here in Texas where they are expected to start wearing a mask. And here's what I have to say about mask wearing. She knows that I don't really believe that it's necessary. And she said she didn't want to wear a mask. So I said, well, let's have a little bit of a conversation here about this. And she said, sure. What do you think, Dad? I said, I'll leave it up to you. You have the choice to make if you would like to wear a mask or not. But I want you to hear me out. And I said, what I have always thought and what I believe about wearing PPE is that it's their house, their rules. If I want to go on that construction site and they require ear pro, eye pro, and a hard hat, then if I'm going to be on their construction site, I need to wear eye pro, ear pro, and a hard hat. I said, it's just like our house. I said, if somebody came to our house and started jumping on your bed, what's the rule in our house about jumping on the bed? It's not allowed. Our house, our rules. Sometimes we go to somebody's house, and the moment we walk in the door, they say, please take off your shoes. Would we ever argue that point and say, no, I want to leave my shoes on? No. In fact, often I've had to take off my shoes and had a hole in my sock. Their house, their rules. When people used to come over to the homestead, when kids would come over, a lot of kids that aren't used to being around farm animals enjoy chasing chickens. Again, our house, our rules. We don't chase the chickens. Well, maybe the rooster. Just to keep him from getting a little too cocky. We need to, at the same time, realize who are wearing masks. I think that there's 3 types of people right now that are wearing masks. We got people like me that are putting on their mask when they enter Home Depot so that I can shop there, so that I can do what I need to do. The moment I walk out that door, the mask comes off. And then there are people that are actually completely and totally fearful of COVID-19. There is a true, real phobia there. These are the people that are driving around with clear face shields on in their car. I saw a man the other day who had a respirator. Not a face mask, not a handkerchief wrapped around his face, but a full-blown respirator on while he was driving in his car by himself. That is motivated by fear. And then the third group of people is the people that are in between. They don't worry about what's going on in the news. They're not worried about what somebody's opinion is. They're not worried about looking good by wearing their masks. They're indifferent. And this is the bulk of people. They're indifferent. If a mask is required to go in the store, hey, it is what it is. And they believe the reasons, they believe what they are being told, and they go for it. But I want to jump back to these people that are fearful. Fear clouds people's judgment. Fear makes people very easy to manipulate, very easy to control, as does anger. Why are these people so fearful? So fearful that when they go to the store, not only are they masking up, some people still wearing rubber gloves, plastic face shield, mask on, Clorox bleach wipes in their purse. Why? What you need to realize is that we are being intentionally separated on our viewpoints. Those people that are fearful like that, they have a different news feed than you do. They have a different news feed on their Facebook page. They have a different news feed on their social media, and they have different friends than you do. And those friends are telling them a different story. We need to keep in mind that we are not going to change anybody's mind by causing them greater fear. By not having a mask on and by inducing them to be even more fearful that you are breathing on them, that you are going to pass along what they believe is a completely deadly disease. You're compounding their fear, but also proving what they believe about you, that you are an awful person that does not care about them, does not care about their family, and does not care about passing that disease on to them. We need to think about this in a way of, are you out there trying to prove something by not wearing a mask or by getting in arguments about the mask? Or are we trying to help others? Are we trying to educate others? Are we trying to infiltrate and influence other people? It's commonplace for missionaries to wear clothing of the local people, and those serving as doctors or dentists in foreign countries to respect the customs. Like our military, when we're in Muslim countries, not drinking, right? Not consuming alcohol. It's out of respect for a belief of others. And nothing looks worse or crazier than going on social media and saying that on September 15th, I'm not wearing a mask anymore, and on September 16th, wearing a mask to go out and buy groceries. The only way to change is to fully accept where we are at this moment and a game plan to work within that framework that's been given to us, that's been set up by others as insurgents. Convincing others by listening and showing empathy for their fear because it's real. And by showing them kindness and by showing them respect, we have a better opportunity to help people change than by yelling at them or by not wearing a mask and inducing more fear. This is an insurgent attitude. And this insurgent attitude is something that we will be talking a lot more about, and we need to have a better understanding of. I'm running out of time here, so I wanted to say this. Let's get prepared for this election that's coming. I don't think any of us really knows what's going to happen next, so we need to be ready. Masks, bleach, hand sanitizer, and toilet paper are back on the shelves. Are we going to be told that there's a second wave of COVID? If we are, now is a good time to go buy that stuff. Food, water, shelter, protection. Are you ready? Next episode, maybe we can go through some lists and talk through what our minimum baseline is to be prepared. I will be taking off Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off of work in preparation or with the idea in mind that I'm not sure what's going to happen. Not saying you should do the same, but our mindset needs to be in a place where we are not willing to take stupid risks. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you learned anything, please consider donating. You can go on the website, Prepare.Defend.Lead.com. There is a button on the podcast page and on the first page in order to donate through PayPal. That money will go back into advertising and pushing this mission forward. Please review this podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen and share it with some friends. Again, this was Prepare, Defend, Lead with me, Joe Prim. Let's get after it. Let's have an insurgent mindset and let's make a difference. Hold fast and God bless.